Sign it, he said. He slid the document across the breakfast table with 2 fingers, the way you push a tip toward a waiter you don't respect. 11 pages, his lawyer's letterhead, my name on every clause. And at the bottom of page 9, a line that said my assets were, quote, unverified and presumed minimal. Minimal, I looked at that word for a long time. Then I looked at my husband, the man I'd built a life with for 3 years, and I smiled. Smart thinking, I said. He had no idea what that smile meant. He would. My name is Celeste Morrow. I'm 46 years old. And this is the story of how my husband handed me the weapon that destroyed him. I live in a brownstone on Marlborough Street in Boston's Back Bay. The kind of street where the brick is older than most families, and the trees have been bending over the sidewalk since before anyone alive remembers planting them. I've lived here for 11 years, 4 of them alone, 7 of them with a man who thought he owned the ground I walked on. My mother, Lorraine Morrow, was a bookkeeper for a construction firm in Quincy for 27 years. She could find a missing penny in a spreadsheet the way a surgeon finds a bleed by instinct, by patience, and by refusing to stop looking until she found it. When she retired, her boss said, "You saved this company more money than any executive I've ever hired." She said, "I know, that's why I want the pension in writing." That was my mother. Trust everyone. Verify everything. Before we go on, if you've been listening to these stories, subscribe. It costs you nothing, means the world to us. Now let me tell you about the man who thought I was simple. I married Grant Aldrich on June 9, 2023. He was CEO of Aldrich Meridian, a commercial real estate development firm he'd built from a single property in Somerville into a $90 million portfolio spanning 3 states. He was the kind of man who entered rooms like he'd already bought them. Tall, tailored, a handshake that lasted exactly 1 second too long, just enough to remind you who was in charge. I thought I'd married confidence. What I'd actually married was a man who confused control with love. For the first 2 years, Grant was impressive. He paid every bill, chose every restaurant, picked the vacation destinations, the furniture, the wine. My mother would say, that man is decisive, not generous, not kind, decisive. She made the distinction like a woman drawing a line in sand softly, but exactly where she meant it. Grant introduced me at company events as my wife, Celeste. She keeps me grounded. Like I was a meditation app, something that managed his stress, something quiet and functional that he could close when he was done using it. His business partner, Troy Wexler, shook my hand at every gala with the same smirk. Taking care of our boy, he'd say, every time, like I was staff. I smiled at Troy every single time. The same smile I'd give Grant at the breakfast table 3 years later. The smile that means I see exactly what you are, and you have no idea what I am. The pattern didn't start with the Postnup. It started with erasure. July 2023, 1 month after the wedding, Grant moved all our joint account access to his login. Streamlining, he said. I'll handle the finances. You've got enough on your plate. My plate was a career in healthcare administration that I'd built over 18 years, but he said it the way you'd say it to a child overwhelmed by homework. I didn't argue. I opened a separate account at a credit union in Cambridge, funded it quietly. My mother had taught me that a woman should always have money her husband doesn't know about. Not because he's bad, she'd said, because life is unpredictable, and unpredictable favors the prepared. December 2023. Grant's Christmas party at the Four Seasons. I was standing by the bar when I overheard Troy Wexler talking to another partner, a man named Cal Gibbons. They didn't see me. Troy was holding a rocks glass and laughing. Grant's brilliant, Troy said. Married a woman with no assets, no connections, no complications. Clean balance sheet. She's a line item, low cost, high utility. Cal laughed. Does she know? Know what? She's happy. She gets the brownstone, the vacations, the credit card. What's to know? I stood behind the column for 90 seconds. My champagne went warm in my hand. I didn't move. I didn't react. I filed it. March 2024. Grant forgot our dinner reservation, my birthday. I sat at the restaurant for 40 minutes before he texted. Board meeting ran long. Rain check? No apology. No happy birthday. Just a reschedule like I was a conference call he'd bumped. my mother called that evening. I didn't tell her about the dinner. She heard it anyway. Mothers hear what you're not saying better than what you are. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Celeste, do you remember what I told you when you were 12, about the woman who built a house?" I remembered. She told me a story about a woman who built a house brick by brick while her husband watched television. When he finally looked up, the house was finished, and the door was locked. "Keep building, baby," my mother said. Keep building. Here's what Grant Aldrich thought he knew about his wife: healthcare administrator. Comfortable salary, $94,000 a year, no investments, no inheritance, no financial footprint worth worrying about, clean balance sheet. Low cost, high utility. Here's what was actually true. My mother had been saving since 1987. Every bonus, every tax refund, every penny she squeezed from the construction firm's profit-sharing plan. When my father died in 2009, heart attack at 58 on the factory floor of a paper mill in Braintree, she took his life insurance, his pension payout, and every dollar they'd saved together, and she put it into a trust. The Lorraine Morrow Family Trust. Established 2010. Sole beneficiary, me. By the time my mother retired in 2018, that trust held $1.4 million in index funds, municipal bonds, and 2 rental properties in Quincy. A duplex and a 3-family, generating $4,200 a month in rental income. I never touched it. I never talked about it. I never posted about it. I drove a 6-year-old Honda Accord and shopped at Marshall's and let Grant Aldrich believe he was the only person at the table with money. My mother didn't raise me to be flashy. She raised me to be invisible when it mattered. And it was about to matter more than ever. But there's more. After my mother's trust was established, I started building on my own. Between 2015 and 2022, before I ever met Grant, I used the rental income plus my savings to quietly invest. I bought a small commercial property in Dorchester through an LLC called Morrow Holdings. I built a brokerage account at Vanguard that grew to $340,000. I maxed my $401K every year for 12 years. By the time Grant slid that Postnup across the table, my personal net worth, between the trust, the properties, the brokerage, and retirement, was $2.3 million. Grant's company, Aldrich Meridian, was worth $90 million on paper. But paper and reality are different things. He was leveraged to the teeth, $61 million in commercial debt across 14 properties. His actual equity, once you subtracted the loans, the partner splits, and the personal guarantees, was roughly $3.8 million. My husband thought he was 10 times richer than me. He was less than twice. And the best part? Every dollar I had was clean, free, and entirely in my name. No debt. No partners, no leverage. My money didn't owe anyone anything. His money owed everyone everything. Tuesday morning, March 18, 2026. Grant walked into the kitchen at 7:15 a.m. in his charcoal suit, the one he wore for board meetings, the one that cost more than my first car. He was already on his phone. He set the manila envelope next to my coffee mug without looking at me. "My lawyers drafted something," he said, still scrolling. "Should have done it before the wedding, but we're doing it now. Postnuptial agreement. Standard stuff." "Standard stuff," I repeated. "Celeste, I'm not risking my future on uncertainty. I've built something. I need to protect it." "From me." He looked up, not with guilt, with impatience. The way you look at a coworker who's asking too many questions in a meeting that should have ended 5 minutes ago. It's not personal. It's practical. He grabbed his keys, walked to the door, paused. "My lawyer's number is paperclipped to the front. Call them if you have questions." He didn't say goodbye. He hadn't said goodbye in months. I sat at the table, opened the envelope. 11 pages, his signature already on page 9. His assets listed in detail, every property, every account, every holding. My section was 3 lines long. Assets, unverified. Income, salaried employment. Net worth, presumed minimal. Presumed, minimal. 3 years of marriage and my husband presumed I was minimal. I read every page twice. And somewhere around page 7, the clause that said any assets, undisclosed at the time of signing, would be excluded from equitable distribution in the event of divorce, something clicked. Not anger. Clarity. He was asking me to sign a document that would protect his assets and dismiss mine. But the clause on page 7 worked both ways. If I signed this postnup and my assets were undisclosed, which they were because he'd never asked, never looked, never even wondered, then in any future divorce, my $2.3 million would be completely, legally untouchable. His own postnup would protect me from him. I picked up my phone, called my attorney, Nina Vasquez, family law, Boston, sharp enough to cut glass and calm enough to hold it afterward. Nina, I need you to review a postnup my husband just gave me. Who drafted it? His firm. Fletcher, Baines, and Greer. Pause. Those idiots wrote one-sided postnups in the Harrington case. Send it over. I'll have notes by noon. If you've been watching for a while, do me a quick favor, subscribe and hit that like button. Costs you nothing, means everything. Nina called me back at 12:40 p.m. I was in my office at Massachusetts General, door closed, blinds drawn. Celeste, this document is a gift. A gift. He listed every asset he has, every property, every account, every LLC. This is a full financial disclosure, voluntarily given. And your section says unverified and presumed minimal. He didn't ask for your financial disclosure. He didn't even request it. What does that mean? It means if you sign this, and you later divorce, his assets are on record and yours are not. The clause on page 7, the undisclosed assets clause, protects whatever you haven't declared. He wrote a postnup that shields his wife's hidden wealth from himself. His own lawyers built you a fortress and handed you the key. I was quiet for a long time. The ventilation hummed. Someone's pager went off down the hall. Should I sign it? I asked. Celeste, I would sign it in ink, in blood, and in skywriting. Sign it today. I drove home. Grant was still at work. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he dropped the envelope that morning, and I signed every page. I didn't add my assets. He never asked me to. His lawyers never requested them. In their minds, I had nothing worth declaring. I photographed every page, front and back. Sent copies to Nina. Then I placed the signed document back in the envelope and left it on the counter with a post-it note. Signed, you're right, smart thinking. C. Grant came home at 9 p.m. He saw the envelope, picked it up, flipped to my signature. Smiled the way a man smiles when he thinks he's won something. See, he said, that wasn't so hard. No, I said, it wasn't. The postnup changed something in Grant. Not his behavior had always been this. It changed his confidence. He'd always treated me like a supporting character. Now he had paperwork that confirmed it. He became bolder. April 2026. He moved $180,000 from our joint savings to his personal operating account. Business expense, he said. Cash flow thing. Temporary. He didn't elaborate. He didn't think he needed to. May 2026. I found a receipt in his coat pocket. The Langham Hotel, Boston. A Sunday afternoon. $640. Room service for 2. Champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries. Our wedding anniversary is in June. This was a Sunday when he told me he was at a site inspection in Worcester. I didn't confront him. I photographed the receipt, put it back in the pocket, filed it the way my mother filed numbers, precisely, silently, in a place I could find again. June 2026. Our 3rd anniversary. He forgot. Didn't mention it at breakfast, didn't mention it at dinner. At 10 p.m. I said, "Happy anniversary, Grant." He looked up from his laptop, blinked. "Right, happy anniversary, we should do something this weekend." We didn't. That night, I lay in bed beside a man who had forgotten the day he married me, and I made a decision. Not out of anger, out of arithmetic. My mother's kind of arithmetic, the kind where you count what things cost, not what they're worth. I called Nina the next morning. "I'm ready," I said. "For what?" "For everything." Nina retained a forensic accountant named Priya Chakrabarty, a former IRS auditor who, Nina said, finds hidden money the way dogs find bones. She can smell it through concrete. Priya started with Grant's postnup disclosure, the one he'd voluntarily handed me. Every asset, every LLC, every account number. He'd given me the roadmap to his entire financial life and never thought twice about it because he never imagined I'd use it. Within 3 weeks, Priya found what Grant didn't want anyone to see. $180,000 transferred to an entity called Beacon Hill Ventures LLC, not a business account, a shell. It was paying rent on a condominium on Newbury Street, a one-bedroom condo occupied by a woman named Rachel Keene. She was 29. She worked at Aldrich Meridian. She was Grant's director of acquisitions. The condo rent was $3,800 a month, paid from Beacon Hill Ventures, funded from our joint savings, for 14 months, $53,200 in total, paid from our marriage to house his affair. Priya also found that 3 of Grant's commercial properties were underwater, worth less than the debt on them. His $90 million portfolio was a house of cards held together by refinancing and optimism. 2 of his loans were in covenant default. His partner Troy Wexler had quietly been shopping his own shares to outside buyers. Grant Aldrich, the man who slid a postnup across the table to protect his future, was 5 bad quarters away from insolvency. And his wife, the one with the unverified, presumed minimal assets, was sitting on $2.3 million in clean, debt-free wealth he didn't know existed. July 2026. Grant came home on a Wednesday evening and his energy was different. Coiled, he set his briefcase down harder than usual. Poured bourbon without offering me anything. "Did you hire a lawyer?" he asked. The air in the room changed. I was sitting on the living room sofa, reading. I didn't close the book. I didn't look up. "Why would you ask that?" "Because Priya Chakrabarty submitted a financial records request to 3 of my lenders today. And when I called Nina Vasquez's office to find out why, they told me she represents you." I closed the book, looked at him, steady. "Yes," I said. "I hired a lawyer." "Why?" "Because you forgot our anniversary. You moved $180,000 without telling me. You're paying rent on a condo on Newbury Street for a woman named Rachel. And because on March 18th, you slid a postnup across this table and told me you weren't risking your future on me." His face went pale, not slowly, all at once, the way a screen goes white when the power cuts. That's not what. "It's exactly what it is, Grant. You wrote down every asset you own. You handed it to me. You never asked about mine. And then you went to a hotel on a Sunday and spent $640 on champagne and strawberries with a 29-year-old employee while I was at home making dinner you didn't show up for." He sat down. His hand was gripping the bourbon glass so hard I could see the tendons in his wrist. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to understand something. The postnup you gave me, the one that said my assets were presumed minimal, I signed it, and I didn't disclose a thing. Because you never asked." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about $2.3 million, Grant. Trust assets, rental properties, brokerage accounts, retirement funds, all in my name, all predating our marriage. All undisclosed, legally, per the terms of the document you drafted." The bourbon glass stopped moving. His eyes went from my face to the postnup on the shelf where he'd placed it like a trophy, then back to my face. "Your own clause protects my assets in the divorce. Page 7. Any assets undisclosed at the time of signing shall be excluded from equitable distribution. You wrote that to protect yourself. It protects me." Silence. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. The ice in his bourbon cracked. A car passed on Marlborough Street, headlights sweeping across the ceiling. "You can't," he started. "I already have." Grant hired his own forensic team the next day. Fletcher, Baines, and Greer put 3 associates on it. They spent 2 weeks trying to find a way around page 7. They couldn't. Nina received a call from Grant's lead attorney, a man named Douglas Fletcher, on a Friday afternoon in late July. Nina put it on speaker in her office. I was sitting across from her. "Ms. Vasquez, we'd like to discuss a settlement framework." "I'm listening." "Mr. Aldrich is prepared to offer Mrs. Morrow a generous—" "Douglas, stop. Let me save you time. Your client voluntarily disclosed every asset he owns in a postnup he initiated. He failed to request reciprocal disclosure from my client. He included a clause excluding undisclosed assets from division. My client signed in good faith. Her assets, which are substantial, were never requested, never required, and are now contractually protected by your own document. There is no framework to discuss. There is only the math. Silence. Nina told me afterward that she heard Douglas set down his pen. That tiny sound, metal on wood, was louder than anything he could have said. Additionally, Nina continued, we have documentation of $53,200 in marital funds diverted to a shell LLC to fund a condominium for an extramarital partner. We have hotel receipts. We have forensic evidence that 3 of your clients' commercial properties are in covenant default. We have correspondence suggesting his business partner is actively seeking to divest. Your client doesn't need a generous settlement, Douglas. Your client needs a good outcome. And right now, I'm the best outcome he's going to get. The call lasted 7 more minutes. Grant's team asked for a 30-day continuance. Nina gave them 14. The dominoes fell in order, every single one. The divorce was filed on August 12, 2026. Grant contested initially. His attorney withdrew the contest in 9 days after Nina submitted the forensic accounting report to the court. The judge reviewed the postnup, the undisclosed assets clause, and the evidence of financial misconduct. The ruling was straightforward. My $2.3 million was excluded from the marital estate per the terms of the postnup Grant himself had drafted. The $53,200 diverted to Rachel Keene's condo was classified as dissipation of marital assets to be reimbursed from Grant's share. The brownstone on Marlborough Street, purchased during the marriage with joint funds, was awarded to me. Grant's partner, Troy Wexler, sold his shares 6 weeks later. Without Troy's capital, Aldrich Meridian defaulted on 2 commercial loans. The portfolio that was worth $90 million on paper shrank to $34 million after the debt restructuring. Grant's personal equity dropped to $1.1 million. Rachel Keene resigned from Aldrich Meridian the day the divorce filing became public. She moved to New York. She didn't leave a forwarding address. Grant moved into a rental in Brookline, a 1-bedroom, the kind of apartment he used to drive past on his way to buildings he owned. He's still in commercial real estate, but the business cards don't say CEO anymore. They say consultant, the same word he would have used to describe someone he thought was beneath him. I still live on Marlborough Street. The brownstone with the brick that's older than most families and the trees that bend over the sidewalk like they're keeping secrets. Rosa, my cleaning lady for 6 years, still comes on Thursdays. She brought me a cutting of basil last month because my mother used to say basil in the kitchen means the house is alive. I planted it on the windowsill. It's already growing. My mother's trust sits in a fireproof safe in Nina's office. The rental properties in Quincy are still generating income. The duplex has a new tenant, a young woman starting nursing school who asked if she could paint the bedroom. I said yes. My mother would have liked her. I drive a new car now, not because I need to prove anything, but because the Honda Accord finally died at 212,000 miles and I decided I was done driving things into the ground. I bought a Volvo. Practical. Safe. My mother would have approved. Elise, my daughter from my first marriage, is 22 now. She's finishing her last year at BU. She came home last weekend and saw the signed postnup on my desk. I keep it there, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. She picked it up, read page 7, and looked at me. He really didn't ask about your money. He really didn't. Why not? Because he looked at me and saw what he wanted to see. A quiet woman with a comfortable salary and no complications. He never thought to look deeper because he'd already decided I wasn't deep. She set the document down. Mom, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard. No, baby, the scariest thing is that it almost worked. I still have my mother's recipe box. Blue ink on index cards, every Sunday dinner she ever made. Last week I made her pot roast, the one with the carrots that fall apart and the gravy she thickened with a roux she learned from her grandmother. I set the table for 2. Elise came over. We ate in the kitchen with the basil growing on the windowsill and the evening light coming through the window the way it does in October when Boston can't decide if it's still summer or already winter. My mother told me one thing that I carry every single day, not in a letter. not in a trust document. In a phone call, the last one before she passed, when her voice was thin but her words were heavy. Celeste, a man who never asks what you have will never understand what he's losing. She was right, Grant never asked. He presumed, he assumed. He slid an 11-page document across a breakfast table and thought he was protecting his future. He just didn't know it was my future he was protecting. Quiet women don't announce what they've built. They don't display it. They don't argue about it at dinner tables or prove it at company galas. They just build, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, year by year, in silence, in patience, in the kind of stillness that men like Grant mistake for emptiness. And when the document arrives, when the pen is in their hand and the line is waiting for their signature, they don't cry. They don't negotiate. They don't beg. They smile. And they sign. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and join our community for more true life stories. We'll see you in the next one.